imagine someone being shot 11 times. I want to read something from the DA report. As the officers approached the first floor northern apartment, the door swung open. A male later identified as Mr. Henley was standing in the doorway with a knife in his hand. Officer Engelberg and Officer Himpelman stood in the grassy area west of the apartment, 20 to 30 feet from Mr. Henley. Mr. Henley wore a black shirt and no shoes. Mr. Henley looked directly at the officers, raised the knife over his head, and began to charge at the officers. Concerned for their safety, Engelberg believed that Henley had a knife in his hand. Concerned for his safety, Officer Engelberg fired his weapon at Mr. Henley. Mr. Henley was still within the concrete landing in front of the apartment building, moving towards the officers when Officer Engelberg began shooting. Officer Engelberg continuously yelled commands to stop and get on the ground. Mr. Henley fell to one knee. Officer Engelberg stated that he stopped and reassessed the situation. Mr. Henley returned to his feet again and continued closing the distance between himself and Officer Himpelman. Officer Engelberg fired additional rounds at Mr. Henley, still believing a knife was in his hand. Mr. Henley fell a second time and continued moving towards the officers. He got back up again. Engelberg fired his weapon again. At that point, Officer Engelberg no longer observed the knife in Mr. Henley's hand. Officer Engelberg was unsure what happened to the knife. That's the DA report. Now in our lawsuit. In the lawsuit, the question asked, did my son have a knife? With respect to allegations contained in paragraph 90 of the complaint, defendant admits descendant was not in the possession of a knife at the time of his death. That's in our court case now. So how can they get away with that? You know, now in court papers, they say my son didn't have a knife and didn't charge them. What can we do? What can we do? If the police lie, the outside investigators, that's the town over, investigates, and then they investigate each other. Westminster investigates Thornton, Thornton investigates Westminster. 10 days before my son was killed, another boy, they're 10 days apart in age, he was also killed unarmed, and they force us for a civil lawsuit. You know, okay, I want you to pay me money for my son being killed by you guys. That's what they force us to do. I don't want money. I don't want money. They don't have body cams.
There's new legislation. We're fixing.
I know, SB 20 passed, and they do have to have body cams by July of 2023.
But there's another one for police accountability.
I hope so.
Where even if they have civil lawsuits, then they still can be criminally prosecuted.
But I guarantee Westminster Police Department, they're going to wait till July of 2023 to get body cams.
Those body cams never help us anyways.
No, we see them murder people.
Well, I just need to figure out how we can get an investigation when shootings happen instead of an interview for the cops.
And vacation.
And paid vacation.
Need more auditors.
I mean, months after my son was killed, I seen on Facebook, Louis Engelberg, he was at Have a Donut and Coffee with a cop at a shop, sitting there with a smile on his face, you know? And I just need something to change in Westminster, you know. You can't.
Justice for Timmy.
Say his name!
Justice for
Timmy.
Timmy.
Say his name! Say his name!
Timmy Haley.
Say his name!
Timmy Haley.
We're here for you, Mama.
I can't even think. But I need to figure out how. There's no integrity left in. Police are supposed to protect us. And I was raised, I had no idea. So no one be mad at people that don't know that cops do this, because I was one of them, you guys. So you cannot be mad at people when they don't understand, because I didn't understand. And I raised my kids to respect police officers, but now I know the truth, and it's like a bad dream, and I know the lies and the corruption that goes on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Spring. Joe, do you want to go next? You guys all know Joe. This is the most awesome politician ever.
Thank you. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for your statement. Former state representative Joe Salazar, civil rights attorney. You know, when I was here in this building, I was here from 2013 to 2019. I spent a lot of my legislative career fighting against the police and the DAs, right? In 2014, I brought legislation to stop a lot of the abuse that we saw. And the two lobbying groups that fought the hardest were the DAs and the police. And so then it makes you wonder, why would the DAs show up when they always purport to be objective? That they're only here for justice, right? But yet they'll fight against any legislation that holds cops accountable. 2015 brought more legislation against law enforcement, citizens' right to record police activity, because I always knew that the body cams, right, that was really important legislation, but what was just as important is allowing our own people to record police activities without being harassed, without being retaliated against. And at the same time, the ACLU, they developed their own little app. And that app allows you to just touch on it to record police activity, and that activity automatically gets uploaded to a server at the ACLU. And then I ran the legislation to allow people to record police activity. In fact, it's the only one of its kind in the entire country, even 6 years later. And then we ran more legislation against law enforcement in 2016, 2017, 2018, and then you saw more legislation coming this past summer. We saw the legislature pass really powerful legislation getting rid of qualified immunity, right? Whoa! Which is a really big deal.
Except for state troopers, still gotta do that.
But let me tell you what is missing here, and it's always been missing. The ability to take the power of killing people away from police.
Yeah!
That's what's been missing the entire time. In 2017, I tried running legislation. I started drafting it to change the standard around, right? Because right now, law enforcement can kill you if they feel, if a reasonable officer, and we have to start looking about what the hell a reasonable officer standard is.
There aren't any!
All right? I mean, there's a lot of questions about that.
That's not a thing.
It's not a thing, right? But the standard is right now is that if a reasonable officer is in fear of their life or the lives of others, then they can use deadly force.
Oh.
Well, they can make up anything that they want, right? As I was talking with some of the families over here, you see cops holding people down who are not resisting, who are being handcuffed, and the cops are yelling out, stop resisting, stop resisting. And the person's like, I'm not resisting, right? And they do that because they want to give you a resisting charge, right? They make those comments so that way they can give you a resisting charge. So whatever an officer dreams up in the course of an arrest, well, that's what a judge will believe. That's what a jury will believe, right? And those are the standards that need to be changed. There are standards that the UN has, that the European Union has, that takes that power to just automatically kill people, takes it away from the cops altogether, and holds them accountable. That's one of the things that needs to happen here in the state of Colorado.
Yes! Accountability now!
And that's the important part of it, right? Is because Adam asked me the question. He says, "Do you believe in defunding police or do you believe in abolishing police?" And I said, well, hold on a second. I said, hold on a second. Although some of these terms are self-evident, right? Abolishing and defunding, I need you to define for me what you believe that means, right? Because we have to get on the same wavelength where that's concerned, okay? And because I'm into abolishing police, dismantling the system, and building it back up with community power. That's how we change things around, right? That's how things need to happen in the United States of America from day one. Because what I tell people is that this system has never been built by us. It has been built to be against us. It was never built for us. It was built against us, right? Everything that you see, all the people who suffer the loss from abusive police, that is an oppressive government. And we all are facing that. And it has gotten worse year after year after year. Have you seen cops stop killing black and brown people? No. Have you seen cops stop killing indigenous or migrant people? No. No, you haven't seen any of that happening. That's why we have to abolish it and build it back up in an image that reflects community.
100%.
Now, people will be out there shocked and shaken to the core. I can't believe you said that. You just want people to run rampant. You just want criminals to be all over the place, right? Well, those people, they're just stupid, right? Of course, we have to have some type of policing, but it has to be policing on our level. Not policing based off of a system that just wants to preserve the status quo.
Right!
That's what it means to abolish and rebuild. And we have the ability to do that. Somewhat. Because it all happens here. This is the House of Representatives right here, right? On the other side is the Senate. And right here on these windows, that's the governor's office. This is. But the system is hard to break down. It is a living, breathing creature that has been around for centuries, and it fights for itself. And that's why we elect people to come here to help change that. But once they get inside, and believe me, I know it, once you get inside, you realize what a living, breathing, evil beast that system is, and how hard it is to take it down. We need more people in here. We need some of you in here, in this building, to help out those good representatives and those good senators, change the system around in our way. Oh, you can always volunteer, man. I'm telling you, you find your favorite senator or your favorite representative, and you tell them, I want to volunteer for you, right? And they'll get you right in there. And you can even tell them, I want to volunteer on this particular bill. And they'll help you out. I had so many people come through my office, and they're like, I want to volunteer on the Ralph Carr Freedom Defense Bill to fight against the Trump administration. And then we plugged them into that system, right? We made sure that they were a part of it. So that's the best way to go about doing it. But, you know, it takes brave people to run for office, like Adam. Adam's running in Aurora City Council. It takes brave people to run, because running for politics is a hell of a thing. It is not a fun thing running a campaign, having to walk the streets, go door to door, having to fight. In fact, for some of us in our cultures, man, it's not okay to go out and ask people for money, right? And that's a tough thing, but you have to get over it in order to run for office. We have to elect people who are humble, who understand our communities, and understand history. That's a big deal. We need more Indigenous people in this building. We need more Indigenous people in this building because of the historical perspective. We need more Black and brown people in this building because of the historical perspective. We need more Asian people. We need more than just one Palestinian woman in the House of Representatives all up in this system, right? We need people who are humbled by community, who have served community, in order to come in and dismantle over 170 some years of a racist system built in the state of Colorado. It takes all of you. It takes all of you to make that happen. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop. I thank you for being here. I thank you for rising up. I thank you for your voices, right? I mean, this is where it all starts. But here's one thing before I go. I want to be sure and say this, is that I understand the words Black Lives Matter, because no lives matter unless Black lives matter, right? I also understand too that missing and murdered Indigenous women lives matter, because no lives matter until their lives matter. I also understand too that Palestinian lives matter, that transgendered lives matter. Oh my goodness, the horrors that the transgender community is facing right now, right? They also face brutality too from the police, right? And the list goes on and on. But we all have a common enemy in that whole thing, right? In that whole macrocosm. The common enemy is the oppressive system. That's why our lives have to matter. It has to matter by dismantling the system and putting it back together, so that way our lives can matter. Stand with each other. Do not try to elevate your community over another. That's what we saw as the folly of the civil rights movement. We have to stand together at all times, because that common denominator is an oppressive system that was never built by us, but built to oppress us. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. So I don't want to do that.
Thank you, Joe. Donnie. Is Donnie on? There he is. Paul Castaway's cousin, Donnie. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everyone here. Hello.
Thank you.
I block everything down.
Hello, everybody. I am Paul Castaway's cousin. A lot of people don't know that. I'm just going to tell you who Paul was, and I'm going to get into this. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know I was going to speak, but I'm just going to go for the heart. From the heart. Get me and my family. We had some family problems at the time. We were dealing with some stuff, and he was the only family member that stuck up to the plate. You know, he kept telling me, stay out of trouble, do this, do that, and I did. You know, at one point I was bad. You know, I was anxiety. I was doing all types of dumb shit that I shouldn't be doing. Like, honestly, I shouldn't be here. But my cousin Paul, do you, and just represent who you are. So I never ever forgot about that, you know. But I wanted revenge, you know. I really wanted to lock and load and go shoot some police. That's how I felt. But inside my head, you know, I was do that. You know, you're better than that. You know what I mean? So just have a positive outlook. You know, when they started protesting, Jason and his family and the group, you know what I mean? Like, I wish I was there, but I was dealing with personal problems. Then when the George Floyd stuff popped off, you know, that, like, I was in a better spot. I was in a better place. I felt better. So I was like, you know what? I got to be out here. Because, you know, I didn't get a chance to do it my first time. So here I am. So awesome, buddy. I'm with you guys. I stand with you. I know what you guys are going through. So if you guys ever need anyone to talk to, I'm here. But what the fuck they're doing to all of our family. Paul's cousin Gabe, he's a big protester in Minnesota, you know, and he influenced me to come out here mostly. Most of my family and them influenced me. A lot of you guys influenced me. A lot of you guys, I see Janet, James, everybody, Red, Miles, there's so many names, you know what I mean? Brian, you know, and I love you guys and I appreciate it. You know, so if you guys ever need anyone to talk to, I'm tired of them killing all of us. I'm tired of seeing all these mothers getting us. This shit has to fucking end, and it has to end now.
Period.
So, I love everybody. Thank you guys for letting me talk.
Thank
you guys.
Thank you, Donnie.
You got this, baby.
I am a 12-year-old who will be attending shoot. When people look at me, they don't see a black male. Not yet, anyway. Not until I turn around the age of 15, I'll be perceived as an aggressor versus an aspiring scholar like I want to be. No one will notice that when I become older, I want to be a marine biologist or that I want to be a human rights activist like my mom. All they will see is the color of my skin. No matter how dark, salute from the cute kid you wave at while walking by to the dead black man by hands of police. I am now 11 years younger than Elijah McClain was when his life was taken by the hands of the royal police. Does that mean that I have to count down the days until Elijah is me? I did not know that I could be a victim of police brutality in Colorado. Me and my family are from the South. We moved to Colorado for the search of racial equality. I did not know my life was in danger just for being black in Colorado. Like the states that fly their Confederate flags proudly until I heard the name Elijah McClain. Then I heard the name of Devon Bailey. I heard the name of Joel Anthony. And I think, am I not safe? Being black in America is not safe anywhere for me. So every boy, girl, man, and woman who has a speck of color in their skin, safety is not guaranteed. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I ask you today, what are you doing for the man justice for Jesse Cedillo? What that changes tomorrow. I did not fully understand what Black Lives Matter meant until I read Elijah McClain's story. It's not that we are not a group. We're saying that all lives will not matter until Black Lives Matter too. We demand justice for Jesse Cedillo, Elijah McClain, and many others that have been
often. He's so hard on himself, y'all. We're Colorado for the Take It Down rally. I don't know if y'all know that Pueblo, Colorado still has the only standing Christopher Columbus statue in the state of Colorado. That's right. Pueblo, ever. Actually, Pueblo, Colorado established Christopher Columbus Day for the world. I've been out there fighting for the past 2 years, rain, sleet, or snow, and we met this family out there screaming out in the crowd, justice for Jesse. So we had us, and when we found out who the sweet, loving, caring kid was and how much his family loved him, we could not stop the fight for justice for Jesse. Denver westward and read the article that was just written where it shows footage of the police placing a gun under Jesse Cedillo's dead body. When will they be held accountable? Property is never more important than life. Doesn't matter what you're doing, what you're stealing, what you're breaking, unless you are taking another human's life, your life should not ever. And that's why we fight for Jesse Cedillo. That's why we fight for his little niece, for his sisters, for his mama. Justice for Jesse.
Jesse Cedillo! Jesse Cedillo!
Jesse's mom's gonna go next.
Yes!
All the way from Pueblo.
Hello, my name is Lynette Fox Naranjo, and I am the mom of Jesse Cedillo. Jesse Cedillo was 20 years old. I got a knock on my door at 2:30 in the afternoon. I knocked on the door, and she told me that my son was dead. And I had seen the video on Facebook. Well, I clicked on it and then turned it off. Someone told me don't watch it. My daughter watched it and then went to work. I knew instinctively that the cops had killed him, and I don't know why. I knew that there was a police killing in the area. I told my husband that morning. They said, stay out of the area. There's a police killing. Another one. And when she knocked on my door, I said, the police killed him, didn't they? And she said, yeah. I got on Facebook to look at the video because I hadn't looked at it. And I didn't, even with the blur, because there was a blur showing that day. Even with the blur, you could tell he was not charging the officers. And my son was scared to death. He rolled himself in a ball. I mean, I have gotten those videos. I have 3 body cams from the deputy who shot him and then 2 other deputies. There are still 10 other Provo Police Department officers that have not released body cams. I have videos from the neighbor. I have a ring video that was taken, no, a nest, that was taken from across the street. But for some reason, it time-lapsed. And I can't figure out how to open it up all the way. The cops didn't do anything with it. They just said, oh, that's of no value to us because it won't open up. It's because the little bit that I did get to open up, you can clearly see he had no gun. You could clearly see he was up against the wall from the minute he got out with his hands up. He was actually doing this with his hands, like this. He was covering his head from being shot, and that's what he was doing. He was covering himself. He was shot 5 times, but he was shot at 15. 10 of those shots went into the house that was behind him, which was an elderly lady that lived there. At least they could have given him the duty in charge of reckless endangerment for that, like they did with Breonna Taylor when the cops were that. But no, they didn't even talk about it or anything. I made the mistake, and that's something that a lot of us do, because we don't know. We get killed by police, and how do you act? What do you do? I mean, there honestly are steps that you should take that we've learned now since we've done it. But number one, you should always do your own independent autopsy done immediately. Second day, I called him and said, "Do you want to do an independent autopsy?" "Oh no, they do a good enough job." He was from here, longer my attorney. I've actually gone through 3. Another one here just told us that they didn't think that we had a case for Jesse because Jesse had a gun and that he did not. I told him that. I told him that. I actually told him that on their review this morning. I wrote it on their review. I said, if you would have talked to me more instead of just assuming what you needed to, I could have told you everything that I found out, but you decided not to. When it comes to police killings, we end up having to become the investigators basically ourselves. I mean, we do. I mean, especially me and my daughter right here, Jaylyn, we have both investigated, tore the videos up. I mean, just did everything to try to find out what happened.
Police won't fix themselves.
They will never fix themselves because they don't think they're doing anything wrong.
What did the governor's office tell us, Ms. Lynette? That they thought that other people were investigating.
The governor's office did not know that each city investigated themselves. They assumed that, okay, if it's Pueblo, El Paso. That's still because if you read through my son's reports, CBI went and they went and interviewed people. When they interviewed people, every single question that they asked to somebody who had something positive to assist, and they made excuses for. In fact, a woman she said she saw nothing. She said that what they did to him was wrong, even if he had a gun. And they go, well, did you know would it change your mind if he goes, no? And they go, well, you want to know what he did? He carjacked somebody. And she goes, so because of a car, he deserved to die?
Property is never more valuable.
Exactly. And who were against what their narrative was. If you see, they did not interview anybody but the main officer until it happened March 14th. They did not interview anybody until July 29th. They gave them months and months and months to come up with their stories, everybody. The only officer who gave a story, and that was 3 days later, was Deputy Alfonso. Everyone else didn't speak until, and that was only because I had a meeting with the DA in June, and I gave him all of the questions of everything that I was finding out and seeing, and he came up with answers for every single thing that I told him.
And now Alfonso's listed as a victim.
He was already listed as a victim,
That's
day one.
How do the police get listed as a victim?
He's actually going away from him.
Sorry for the buffering, folks. The Wi-Fi is
No,
on.
that's exactly what he's doing. He's going away from him. I want to start, we need to talk about our loved ones, but I think that we also need to start talking about what we as citizens, if it happens to you. Because it could happen to you at any time. All it takes is one thing to happen, and your loved one is gone, and you're stuck there saying, okay, what do I do now? Because they lie from day one, they follow you around, they harass you, they turn your loved ones into monsters. So I had to hand out a paper that tells you what to do in the first 24 hours if you have a loved one killed by police. And since we can't, so they won't police themselves and they won't fix themselves, we have to learn how to handle them in more than just one way, and we have to learn how to handle them when it comes to what to do if it happens. Yeah. Yes, never agree. And if they tell you your loved one died from police, don't you talk to them. Don't talk to him. Say, don't talk to him. Don't talk to him. Because they will use everything you say against them. Yep, as a juvenile, my son is a victim of the system, period. At 13, I was a single mom. Their dad had passed away, and I went and asked for some help from DYS. He was getting in trouble at school and, smoking marijuana and doing some things like that. And I went to them because a friend of his parents told me, this program will help you and they won't take your kids and they do this and they do that. Well, they were wrong. He mouthed off to her, said he wouldn't quit smoking marijuana, and he said, you can't make me. She said, watch. And she locked him into El Pueblo Boys Ranch. And I don't know if any of you know about El Pueblo Boys Ranch. El Pueblo Boys Ranch was a facility in Pueblo for decades. But when they closed it in 2017, they had 239 instances of abuse against the kids in that facility. My son, when he was in that facility, had a broken nose. He was kicked in the chest by a teacher. He was made to fight with other kids. And these are the things that I know about. That I know there are so much things that he didn't tell me. That was the start of his involvement with the system. And from that point on, he became kind of like he wasn't a ward of the state until he got committed. But it was like a domino effect. I mean, because he didn't do anything to break the law, and he got put in that place. He got out, and he broke a window, and he got put in another place. And then he got out, and he got put in. He got in trouble because he violated his probation, and he got committed for an assault on a PYC guard. I said, son, why did you do that? He said, Mom, he's evil. He don't care about the kids here, and he does some evil things. And I said, son, you can't do that. And he said, I know, Mom, but he was evil. He said he was evil. And it's just kind of funny how Jesse supposedly stole a car at PYC against a PYC guard when he had that same thing happen to him with getting committed for a PYC guard. And after he passed away, a PYC guard came onto a news station, and where we were commenting, back and forth with people. And he said, I was under Jesse in there. Jesse did da 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 da. And I said, can't you lose your job for that? You're not supposed to say what you're not supposed to talk about juvenile records for one thing, and you're not supposed to talk about. I worked for Family Dollar for 8 years, and we got in trouble if we did. I mean, there's a no talk. You have to watch what you say on the internet when you have a job. So I kind of got him fired from his job. Not here. He had moved on to Wyoming, so he thought it was okay to talk about my dead son like that. And that's about pretty much what everybody has done in Pueblo since he died. I mean, they've gone so far to say that I should have been sterilized. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, they say that my daughters are on welfare, and that we, not one of us is on, none of us is on welfare. They all raise their kids, they all have homes, they all take care of them, and they all help take care of their brother too. I mean, when they say it takes a village to raise a kid, when you have boys, it really does. I mean, it really does. And my son was the sweetest kid, and anything that you guys could read, if people say, he was this and he wasn't. I mean, did he do some stupid shit? The only people that I see say stuff about him is, the cops. They're cops. No, anyone who's ever met him says, besides his coach. But when you lose somebody to police violence, it brings out a whole, I mean, you can't even describe it, huh, ladies? It's just, I mean, it's like, okay, it's bad enough that your family member is dead, and then it's like 10 times worse that your family member was murdered. But to know that they were killed by law enforcement, and that there is nothing that you could do about it, and that they are going to walk this earth every day, basically next to you, and you can't do anything about it. It is excruciating. I mean, to go to a store and you see a sheriff's deputy, you get post-traumatic stress. You get a flashback. If you go down the street and just anything, and it's nothing that I would wish on anybody, but I would never not fight for my son, so I'll take everything and anything that I get from it to prove that my son deserved to live and his life mattered. And basically, that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Let's give another hand for Lynette. Say his name, Justice Cedillo. Say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
Say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
Say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
Okay, before we have the next one to speak, I just have a quick note I wanted to bring up. I'm from Georgia real quick. I moved up here 2.5 months ago, and as a lot of us may be familiar with, and some of us may not, 2.5 weeks ago, Garrett Rolfe, who killed Rashard Brooks, was reinstated to Atlanta Police Department. They haven't said whether he's getting paid or unpaid leave So let's just be honest. We probably know it's paid leave, and he's getting back pay for it. So I'm pretty pissed off. So let me do one more real quick. Say his name, Rashard Brooks. Say his name. Rashard Brooks. Say his name. Rashard Brooks. Say his name. Rashard Brooks. Okay, we're going to have another family come up and speak real quick. What was your name again, Desi? The Vivo? Vivo family.
Y'all gotta bear with me. It's the first time I've spoke. My name is Stephanie V. Hill, and I am the widow of Joshua V. Hill. Mic on? Yes. Can you hear me now? Yes. Again, I am Stephanie V. Hill, the widow of Joshua V. Hill. These are two of our 4 daughters. July 23rd, 2019, Josh was in mental crisis, and 3 officers locked him in a glass corridor and executed 44 rounds, 27 of which hit his body, 20 entered, 7 just grazed.
Wow.
Love you, Stephanie.
Hello? All right, sorry. Great
Say it
job,
loud.
Mom. All right, July 23rd, 2019, my father, Joshua V. Hill, was shot by Colorado Springs police officers Lucas Aragon, Cole Jones, and Mark Keller. Lucas Aragon shot another man 7 months later on my parents' anniversary, February 27th, 2020.
VIGIL, Joshua Vigil. Hill.
It's okay, baby. You got it.
He shot another man 9 times in the chest and the face, Desmond Hayes, and he is still a working police officer who has pulled me over, who has harassed my family. You know, like 2 years ago, I spoke in front of people right after my father was killed, and you know, like I swore he was gonna have justice. I swore not another man was gonna be killed because my father was shot 20 times. He was shot from head to toe. He had a bullet enter his left eye, entering his brain, and he had a bullet entering his right toe. No, it's correct. Anyway, he was literally shot head to toe. He did have a gun. He did have, you know, a history. But since when is it okay for cops to kill thugs, to kill our people, to kill people who have mental illness, to kill humans? Since when is it okay for a person that puts on a blue suit to be superhuman, to have superpowers, and to be exempt from the laws? I do not want another man, another person, another child, another mother to cry, another daughter mourn their dad. I want police violence to end. I want racism to end. It's time for a change.
Thank you.
Yes. Good job. Hey, Josh B. Hill. Say his name. Josh B. Hill. Say his name. Josh B. Hill.
His name.
Josh B. Hill.
His name.
Josh B. Hill.
So these guys are ready to go. So we're going to move to the bottom of the steps and then continue down there if that's okay.
Let's go.
No, we'll take, yeah.
Okay, so I guess there's a change in event.
They got a permit, they didn't.
They had a permit.
Yep.
And instead of coordinating one after the other, it seems as if we're transitioning. So we're gonna carry that out, but we're gonna stay here. I'm not moving. The tables are gonna be exactly where they are.
And he's gonna move because he has no choice.
Me?
Cut the Plastic's gonna move because Cut the Plastic's gonna get kidnapped.
Now we're gonna participate right here in the free speech space that is presented.
kidnapped the plastic.
They're down there. I think this is starting up here now. I'm not exactly sure. What time does your event start?
Their event is going to start at 1.
Okay. I was hoping that it would just blend from one to the other in a shared community space. Okay. Oh yeah? What happened to the kidnapping of the plastic? I'm trying to figure out where my bag is.
Cut the plastic.
Okay. Okay. Interesting concept. Not sure how that works.
And then we're gonna have like a whole little.
Okay. I'm gonna take my camera down the hill and then I'm gonna come back up on my table. Basically where I'm going with this. 'Cause that was really weird. That was weird. I thought you guys would just finish and roll one into the next. Oh well. Oops, I'm sorry.
Will somebody use my phone to go live when I speak?
On tripods.
I didn't take a card today, so
I might have choose both days that are really good and That's bad. So, I guess this is interesting in the shift of things, but I'm going to be here all day. I got a battery right now backing up. We got drinks, plenty of whatever. Be here, the house to be in LA at the end of the day. So, we got tents, food, snacks.
Can everybody hear me?
A little bit louder.
A little bit louder?
turn that shit up a little bit. Just turn it up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Wait.
My name is Christina Page. My son David Page was killed September 29th, 2019 in Monument, Colorado by El Paso County SWAT. He had recently learned that his son was stillborn and was in mental health crisis. That morning at about 8 o'clock, Officer Stewart from Monument PD showed up at his house for noise complaints. He was extremely upset. He didn't know how to handle his loss, and he was throwing things around in his house. Not necessarily a good decision, but not criminal. Should have been a civil matter between he and his landlord. When police arrived, when Officer Stewart arrived,
Go louder.
at 8 o'clock that morning, David said he was fine. He wasn't suicidal. He wasn't homicidal. He just needed a minute. He wanted to be left alone to grieve his son. Officer Stewart called me, told me what was going on, and I said, hey, let me send you a CBI report so you know who you're dealing with. He said, no. Last Christmas, when your son was in crisis, I rocked him in his bathroom. I know David. He'll be fine. If I need you, I'll call you. I know you're only 15 minutes away. At 11 o'clock, I got the second phone call. Officer Stewart had returned to the house. There had been no new call. He just wanted to check up on him. When he knocked on the door, David said, quote, get a warrant or get fucked, because he's my kid. The officer at that point asked if he was suicidal or homicidal again. David
please leave me alone. I don't like you. You don't like me. Nothing good is going to come of this. Please leave. So he did. 3 o'clock that afternoon, from what we understand, the man who caused his son Silworth showed up at his house, wanting to pick a fight. David grabbed a broken BB gun and shot at him. Officer Stewart came back, and when David refused to speak with him, he called dispatch and reported that he needed SWAT because David had taken a hostage. He was alone in the house, and Stewart knew it. When SWAT showed up, they stood at the house on the north side of the apartment for 90 minutes in what I like to call a tailgate party. During that time, they never reached out to David. They never called me. They never used their bullhorns to speak David's name, to get his attention, to attempt contact. They had no interaction with my son in that 90 minutes. At 4:28, they pulled around to the south side of the apartment, and less than 90 seconds later, in full riot gear, from the turrets of a Bearcat, they shot my son from 35 yards away through a closed door 3 times. They then sent in cameras to confirm he was dead. He was definitely dead. And after the cameras confirmed his death, they sent in double bang flash grenades and set the house on fire. I was standing half a block away trying to get to my son with my crisis team. I thought I was going to rescue somebody and stood around at the police station where my partner and I were unlawfully detained for almost 4 hours. They wouldn't confirm any details. They wouldn't tell me that he was involved. They certainly didn't tell me he was dead. I kept telling them I needed to leave, to go be with my mother, to go be with my family, to grieve, to not be surrounded by police officers who had just killed my child. About 6 o'clock that night, an hour and a half after the shooting, I asked to go get something to eat. I was going to drive over to Safeway, about 3 blocks away, and they said, no, we'll deliver pizza. Why don't you smoke a joint at the picnic table right there? And they directed me to smoke pot at the police station picnic table while I ate Domino's pizza they had delivered, and instead of letting my family leave to feed ourselves. At 7:29 that night, 3 hours after the shooting, the Gazette-Telegraph called me and asked for comment on my son's homicide. And still surrounded by police, that's how I was notified. As we tried to leave, the police surrounded our car. They wouldn't let us leave until I let them know that we were leaving one way or another and they could meet us at our house. We drove down, hung out at the house, when the detective showed up. Now, something you all need to know about El Paso County. We have something called the DFIT team, Deadly Force Investigation Team. What that means is that when there's a shooting, the highest ranking agency in the county of El Paso investigates. What that means for families like Stephanie Vigil and her daughters and myself is that when CSPD kills, El Paso County investigates. When El Paso County investigates or kills, CSPD investigates. So the very day that my son was killed, the police told me not to speak with the Vigil family because they wouldn't want to hear from me. Their investigation was too recent, and it was going to take 2 years for them to complete an investigation for either of our families since they both got killed at the same time. In the year and a half since his death, the police have done 4 o'clock in the morning welfare checks at my house, 20 minutes away from where they killed him. They justified his death because he had a broken BB gun that could have looked like an assault rifle. It was a handgun, by the way. They told me that I couldn't identify my son's body because parts of his skull had been removed to do deep toxicology. I said, that's okay. I want to see my son, put him back together. They said, it'll cost you $8,000 out of my pocket, no payment plan. Well, they had just charged us $10,000 to clean up the mess. So I didn't have $8,000. Turns out, several months later, February 14th, 9 months after his death, a news reporter called me and said, honey, I want to give you a week after his autopsy's released for you to process. I said, no, honey, no problem. You've done us good. As soon as it's released, let me know and we'll sit and talk. She said it was released a week ago to the public. So I found my son's autopsy online. His skull hadn't been removed. All 3 bullets were retained within his body. There was no skull damage. In fact, the initial investigator didn't realize he had been shot in the face because it looked like a freckle. His skull was fully intact. They did toxicology through his urine. There was no reason for me not to be able to say goodbye to my child. The officers in CSPD have harassed me, pulled me over at gunpoint 19 times in the first 21 days after he was killed. I'm registered, insured, and lawfully armed. They denied our victim's advocacy request for therapy for his 2 siblings, both younger than he. They denied an angry armed woman's request for therapy after they killed my child. They've pitted our families against each other. They've driven the tank that they shot him from down the streets of my house and thrown dead flowers on my yard. I now have a $3,000 security system at my house.
Fuck the police.
I don't have $3,000. Thank you. Fuck the police. I don't have $3,000 for a security system. I didn't have to do it because my neighbors. I didn't have to do it because I live in the hood. I had to do it to catch the cops who continue to harass, gang stalk, and intimidate my family. Today I'm standing on the steps where my father in 2004 spoke a week before a multi-agency task force also took his life. Because he stood on these steps, those agencies followed him, harassed him, investigated him, and found nothing wrong in his life that would warrant criminal charges. So instead, they set his house on fire and watched him burn. I swore then that I would stand up. But I knew if I spoke out and said that cops killed my father, nobody would believe me. Cops don't kill people. And if they do, we hear about it on the news, right? Maybe 5, 6 times. You have to remember, this is 2004. This was not May of 2020. 21. And I promised I would be strong and speak out and be at the Capitol and testify and that sort of thing. And I never did because I was terrified for my children's safety. And now they've taken my oldest child. In a year and a half since, I've tried to reach out to a lot of families all over the country, bring us together. I've met hundreds of families all over this country. In fact, on my travels last summer, I met with Gabriel Eaglefeather's family in Minnesota. Sorry, Paul Castaway's family in Minnesota. I met with Gabriel Eaglefeather, his brother. Apologies. And he spoke at my son's angelversary, half a country away, in support of me. I know that if we come together, we can do this. A year ago, we introduced 217. It was a qualified immunity bill. And what this does is ends qualified immunity in our state, which allows our families to see our day in court. It doesn't guarantee conviction. That's not what we want. But it allows us to go to civil court and have them stand. It calls for them to be accountable for the choices that they make, that if we made, we would be jailed for murder for. It also requires all of our officers here in Colorado to wear body cams. In my son's situation, there was no body cam. El Paso County SWAT has made the tactical decision to not allow body cams on their units because then anybody from the public would be able to circumnavigate their less than lethal tactics. Now, the day they killed my 20-year-old autistic in crisis child, they were in a Bearcat. They were fully equipped with less than lethal methods. They chose instead to shoot him through the face. I'm not concerned about their tactical advantage. So now in Colorado, we have to have body cams. The other thing it does is it requires them to file reports when there's civilian contact. Prior to this bill, if you're pulled over on the side of the road with a flat tire and an officer comes up and the two of you get into a verbal altercation because you just don't want his help today, and he kicks the shit out of your car and drives away, days later when you go to internal affairs, they may or may not have a record that you even had contact. Now, any contact an officer has with the public must be reported. I don't know that this is going to change anything. I don't think this is going to make them stop killing our children and our husbands. What it is going to do is take one more step towards accountability so that when our families lose everything, we can have some semblance of accountability and maybe some peace. I will never get my son back. No amount of money will ever replace that hole in my heart. No amount of money will ever give me peace back. No amount of money will ever allow me to lay in my own bed at night and hear the neighbor's dog bark and wonder if it's SWAT kicking in my door today. No amount of money will give me the safety and security that they continue to strip us of. What it does, though, is it gives us a chance to appear in court and have our loved ones' voices heard. I also want to, if you could, real quick. This is my son, David Page. I started a nonprofit called Marley Foundation right after my son was murdered. I didn't want to believe that he was murdered. I didn't want my entire worldview to change. I wanted to believe that he had made some bad choices that day and grieve his bad choices as a mother. And any of you moms out here, you know that sometimes we have to grieve our son's bad choices. So I named Marley Foundation after my son's service animal, Marley. My mom wouldn't allow him to have a dog, so he had a turtle. And after SWAT killed my child, they backed their tank over Marley and squished him. So I lost my grandson, my son, and my son's service animal the same day. It must be coincidence that dead turtles keep showing up on my yard. We started Marley Foundation so that we could be the voice for those of us who can't speak. So I encourage you, I've met families across this country while I was traveling totally by accident who had lost a child or a husband to the police and had never met anybody else who had ever gone through that. And these are people that I met at the hair salon, at the Come and Go, all over the country. So I know that there are people out there who have lost their loved ones to police, who have never had someone to stand with them. And I'm telling you now, if you need somebody to stand with you, the Marley Mamas are here, and we will stand with you wherever you are. All we ask is that you stand with us as well. I also want to give a shout out. Paige Pierce was killed April 9th of this year, just 44 days ago, in Delta County. If you could keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And one of our loved ones, Sandra Meyer, she wasn't able to be here today. Her husband, Sean Billinger, was killed in January of 2019 in Fort Lupton. We also heard Paul Castaway's name. We know other names, Devon Bailey. There's so many. And I want you to think about this number real quick. Since 2000, January 1st of 2000, we have documented and verified more than 20,000 police homicides. That's 5.8 a day. A couple of years ago, most of us would hear about 5.8 a year. That's 365 times what our awareness was. I don't know what you guys can do to help Jesse Cedillo's family get justice, or Tammy Henley's family, or Josh Vihill's family, or David Page's family. I don't know, because quite frankly, folks, Vihill's and I are running out of time.
Same here.
January 22nd of this year, the clock runs out for the Vihills.
July 23rd.
September 28th, the day before David was killed, his clock runs out. At that point, our federal government tells us that we no longer have the right to get justice for our murdered husband and children. I don't know what you can do to change that. I don't expect that as much as I fight, I can change that in the next couple months. But what we need you to do is continue to stand with us, share our loved ones' stories, get their pictures out there, link to your pages, show it on social media, get their stories out there so that at least people remember their names.
And to let everyone know that this is Colorado. This is all of the people here in Colorado.
Yeah, this is just Colorado.
Colorado. So just think, we don't hear about those. Nobody knows about it.
That's something else that I want to touch on really quick and then I'll close. We all see the names in the media. We all see the big ticket names, the ones that get the fancy attorneys and have all the media come down, and people are protesting and rioting in the streets, getting millions of dollars on GoFundMe. And I'm happy for those families. I'm glad they have support. I don't want to take anything away from them ever. My son's GoFundMe,
Thank you.
$5. I couldn't even cash it out because the fees would have been too expensive. I didn't have any help with his memorial. I didn't have anybody marching in the streets. Stephanie did. Stephanie and I marched in the streets.
I got your back. I got your back.
Stephanie and I have been together since about day 90, I think. After we realized that the cops were trying to manipulate us, we really hooked up together. We only live a few miles away from each other. So we regularly try to go down and march and protest for each other and stand by each other. But we don't have crowds of hundreds and thousands showing up for us. We don't have people bringing out the media for us. We don't have the news covering our stories. So we have to count on our community members. We have to count on you guys who are walking by and may not even know who we are and hear our loved ones' stories and decide to take up a cause.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening and being here with us. But we have to count on you. We can't count on people in New York to cover our stories. We can't count on people in Minneapolis to keep our children's names on their tongues. They've got too many there in Minneapolis. We have to count on our community members. So I want you to know, thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for standing here with us today. But please remember us when you leave. We have to carry this, whether we're wearing these shirts or not. These faces are burned into our souls, not just the faces of our own loved ones. I have nightmares about Josh and Timmy and dreams about Jesse. We know each other's loved ones now. We know their stories and we grieve for each of our loved ones. We have 20,000 people to grieve for, folks. Please don't forget our names when you leave. Look up the stories, snap the QR codes, take pictures. Please share them. You guys are our only hope. Especially when we're looking at statute of limitations.
And then if you just tell one person, if each person just tells one person.
Treat it like a good restaurant, folks. You go to a good restaurant and you want to share that. My son was good. Josh Beaver was a good man. Timmy Henley was a good man. Jesse Cedillo was a good man. Please share them. Write reviews. Talk about it on Google. Talk about it on Facebook. Share their names. Please, please, keep standing with us. A lot of days, the only thing we have to keep going is looking to our left and right and seeing that you guys are still here. So, again, my son was David Jackson Page, killed in Monument in El Paso County, Colorado. So, thank you all. I appreciate you being here.
Say his name, David Page. 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 Say his name, David Page.
Cedric Brooks was killed last Friday on First and Perry. 9 officers shot him. They don't even know how many bullets hit him within 30 seconds. She's going to speak for Cedric Brooks.
Okay, my name is Helen Giovanni. I just want to say, we are the power here. Power belongs to the people. I'm here because I care. You're here because you care. Cedric Brooks, I am going to be his voice today because there's no one else here. I have a little paper for you to call. You gotta believe you have the power. You call your elected officials. You tell them. Never, never again should a young boy, 22 years old, be shot and executed with over 30 shots within 5 to 10 seconds. Now, what does that tell you? Is that justice?
No.
I don't care what this young boy did. Cops are not the judge. They are not the executioners. They need to know what they're going to do. And you know who's going to tell them? Us. We're the only ones who can tell them. So come and get a piece of this paper. Make sure, and I do want to say, I am just so heartbroken to see so many people that are killed by the police. The reason I'm here is because he was shot in my neighborhood. I'm a school teacher, and I can imagine these young kids out there being shot, and he didn't die till he got to the hospital. He felt each bullet penetrating his body. Now, how cruel is that? So please, come and get a piece of paper. Make sure that we do something. Every day, do something. We're the power. If we don't believe that, we're going to lose. Those cops are going to walk all over us. They're going to kill our children. We are the power.
They're committing genocide of our children.
Thank
They're
you.
killing all of our kids. It doesn't matter any race.
Say his name, Cedric Fix. Say his name.
Cedric Fix.
Say his name.
Cedric Fix.
Say his name.
Cedric Fix.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No racist.
Police.
Okay, so last March of 2020, I got sent a text from a friend in Austin, and it was of Jesse Cedillo. And I couldn't figure out why did I not hear about this in Colorado at all. His name has not been said enough. It's just brutal, but his sister Jalen's going to speak. Thank you for being here.
Hi everyone. Me and my brother were 18 months apart, so we were really close. And I have a lot to say, but I don't know how to say it. So I first want to speak on about our right to bear arms. You all understand Colorado is a right to bear arms, right? But not when you're black or brown, right? When you see a brown person or a brown woman or a brown man or a black man holding a gun, we initially think they are a threat, but they probably have the right to bear that arm. So why are we shooting them when they have a gun too, right?
Period.
We're allowed to bear arms. We're allowed to have a gun on our hip, but yet my brother was told he had a gun and was still killed for it. It's the state of Colorado. Why are we being killed for things that we are allowed to have, first off? If my brother had a gun, I don't care if he had one or not. Secondly, he did not have a gun. Secondly, he was literally laid there to die for 9 hours. So when we found out about 7 hours later, when the thing was posted online, and I didn't know it was my brother, so I didn't have a biased opinion on it. But when I saw it, I felt disgusted, and I thought it was a child. It looked so tiny. The visual of the person running away was so little. I thought it was a kid. So when I found out it was my brother, wow, those emotions went through my entire body. Like, I can't even explain to you guys. I was in the back at my work. I had to work open to close that day. I got up here and I wanted to say so much, but now I don't know what to say. I also want to speak out about being a Latina woman in this country as 2021. I feel like I don't have a voice and my voice doesn't matter because I'm not dark enough and I'm not white enough. I'm in the middle of everyone. In my whole life, I feel like I haven't fitted in because my skin color and the color of my hair and the color of my eyes and the music I like to listen to and the music and the food that I was raised on. And it's disgusting that our land here is supposed to be ours, and we're treated like it's never been. And I'm sick of walking out of my house every day and being afraid to leave. And this is true life. I'm afraid to leave my house. I've had multiple officers come by my house and wave at me while I'm taking my daughter out her car seat. That's scary. I've had to move my homes since my brother died. I moved close to my sister, so I feel safe. I love everyone, and I appreciate you all for being here. You probably have never seen me before, but I want to change the world, so hopefully you see me again. Justice for Jesse and justice for all. Viva la raza, by the way.
Viva la raza! Say his name, Jesse Cedillo, say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
Say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
Say his name.
Jesse Cedillo!
We're on stolen land, built by stolen hands. We're on stolen land, stolen hands.
Okay, this is Adam Fung. He's running for city council in Aurora, and he's a good man, and he's here to speak.
Excuse me for a moment. Today, I'm not here as a candidate. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the families that have been victims to police brutality. Every story I heard today breaks my heart. And the only thing we can do is change the narrative and change this racist system of policing that was built on rounding up slaves. And it starts with each and every one of you. And we cannot give up. Inside of each and every one of you is the power to make changes into our world, our society. I stand here today with Jesse Cedillo, David Page, Josh Vigil, Timmy, Cedric, Antonio Blackburn, Paul Castaway, and Cedric Vicks. Did I forget anyone else? And now, I would like to say, we cannot take this anymore. It starts with each and every one of you, and we can make that change. We have to abolish the police and rebuild it from the ground up, now. And we cannot have more people die because of this racist system that was built in our society. No longer will black and brown communities live in fear. And we have a long ways to go. MLK says he had a dream, and we must continue that dream. So please, be that change and go out there and bring on positive changes. Thank you.
No good cops in a racist system. No good cops in a racist system. No good cops in a racist system.
No good cops in a racist system!
No good cops in a racist system.
No good cops in a racist system!
No good cops in a racist system.
No good cops in a racist system!
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Thank you to all the families. If you want to hydrate, there's a lot of water, Gatorade, and Cliff Bars and stuff up there. Then we'll just do a march to the police station. Okay, so 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
We'll go in 10 minutes?
10 minutes with water, Gatorade, and snacks up at the top. Feel free to go grab some Kind bars, vegan-friendly protein bars, water, and Gatorade. Yeah, probably so.
He's sitting the ground. He's shushing.
Right. But you said you have video of them putting the gun under him.
Oh, yeah, dude.
So that's the part.
Okay.
That I
Okay.
need because that is obviously been missed.
Yeah, no, I.
My email is on the
Take care, Jack. All right, folks, we're going to go up to my booth. There's going to be a march. I think you might be able to catch it on Crash Landon's channel. Landon's going to march. Crash is going to march. Funk will probably march. Jack, you're not live, so you won't be. We don't know if you'll be marching. I'm going to go back up to the booth and hold space for the day on the AAPI event before we do anything else.
Nursing college graduate. He was somber, sad, with his mask on. Just
Yeah, I
what?
do.
Because he was tired, working all night, late
He does.
shifts as a nurse, trying to treat COVID-19 patients without the proper PPE. This was the time he graduated when the pandemic just first hit. He had to use the garbage bags just to protect himself from COVID. But that didn't stop him. He kept going. He went ahead and got featured on a lot of media outlets. Good Morning America. He told his story how nurses don't have proper PPE. We're not getting treatments for the COVID-19 patients. But it was because of his young, energetic movement, his caring spirit that made a difference in the health professions and treatments for COVID-19 patients. Why am I telling you this story? Because I want to tell you that the youth, the AAPI youth, is here. Their voice is not shut down. Just because we're known to be the model minority, that doesn't mean our voice has to be silenced. As an educator, I often hear about AAPI history education, but it lacks the depth of that education history, such as Malcolm X admired Gandhi for his resistance movement towards British India to gain independence. Then John Lewis, he also was shaped by Gandhi as a civil rights activist. Then, during the civil rights movement, they passed. It was the civil rights leaders, through their activism, that the AAPI population grew through the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. That's right, it paved the doorway. But where's the solidarity with Blacks and Asians? That's why we need to be for Black Lives Matter. If we learned this part of our history, then we would have known. We wouldn't have let it divide us. We would have let us unite us. And let's not forget that the concentration camps, the Japanese concentration camps, if we knew from early on they were local, and all the oppressions, the Supreme Court cases that denied U.S. citizenships to Asians. Had we known these things, we could have easily proven that the Asian minority is simply a myth, and that is it. Going back to Kevin, he's an inspiring youth, just like all the leaders, youth leaders out here today. And I am so proud of them because they're gonna be leading the way. They're gonna have a voice and they're more progressive and looking forward. And for that, I commend them for putting on this event. Thanks, everyone.
Hello everyone, my name is Laura Dennison Langford. Nice to see a lot of you wonderful people here. I just want to thank everybody who is here supporting this event. AAPI Heritage Month is really important to me. I am a biracial Korean American. My mother came to this country a while back, and you know, without her sacrifices, I don't know where I'd be today. My mother was a very hardworking woman. You know, she came to this country, she struggled very, very hard. During the times that she came over here, there was a lot of situations going on with legalities. She actually got her citizenship by staying in a military base. During those times, there was a lot of discrimination, but you had to be quiet in order to actually, you know, make it through. If you said something, a lot of times, you know, you weren't really supported by the police. You weren't really supported by people at that time. Since the wars, there was a lot of discrimination. And, you know, my mother, you know, she came to this country because there was a lot of wars going on. She didn't have a lot of opportunities in Korea, you know, so she came to this country to have a better life for me. My grandmother in Korea, you know, so with her blonde hair and her hazel eyes, we even experienced xenophobia within our own country. So my mother, with those experiences and the fact that her grandfather didn't have clothes until he was 9, we wanted to come to this country in hopes of a better life. My mother did. I was, of course, in her womb. I wasn't a thought at that time, but I embraced this journey with her to this day as I discover her strengths, as I raise my own children, and I feel her blood running through me. Sorry, give me a moment, please. All right. My mother sold candy and fish to get to this country. She was able to successfully come here. She worked hard at multiple businesses she operated and owned. Some of those businesses included a spa. With those businesses, even within our own community here in America, in our own Korean communities, we were actually very discriminated and judged. Because with bathhouses, of course, there are certain issues in regards to, yeah, my mom did have some businesses that had women who did and served prostitution, but I'm proud of her actually for that. I believe that women have the right to do what they need to do with their bodies, especially when they come onto hard times and survival circumstances. In Korea, it was actually illegal to do prostitution, And the US military is actually the one who kept that going up until about 2008. So, in my eyes, I didn't see my mother as a criminal. She helped several women in this country. She helped several people get to this country. And she helped build their businesses. Yes, those businesses are looked down at by many people, but I don't look down at my mother because she came here and she made it. Now, you know, some of the things that I want to mention, you know, the negative stigmas behind prostitution amongst Asian Americans, I want to mention some of those. The stigma was brought on by a law that they had back in 1875. The US Congress enacted this Page Law, and it basically prevented prostitutes from migrating to the United States. A lot of Chinese, a lot of Asian women could not come into this country during those times under the assumption that they were all prostitutes. It didn't matter. So a lot of Asian men had to come to this country and basically be the forefront. So with that, I want to thank all you Asian men for coming to this country and building it up for us Asian American women to make it here as well. Thank you so very much. So growing up, my childhood, I mainly resided with my brothers and now my trans sister. My brothers is now my trans sister, and my Korean aunt and uncles. My cousins and my brothers would speak English with each other, and mostly baby Korean and a mix of Korean English. My military father worked nights. I didn't see him very often, but he did support my family and did as much as he could to help and support my mother. So after my mother passed, of course, because of her type of business, I was harassed a lot by my community and then also by the police in Dallas, Texas. They actually made my mother's business the way it was from the time of the late 80s to the early 2000s. When I had a child, my mother wanted to retire. Unfortunately, with the business and how illegal and how certain operations are, my mother passed away from a stroke after receiving Botox from her associate's son under the table. It was a very odd situation, but at that time I was uneducated to deal with that situation. Also, knowing that my mother had a PIM charge, we were definitely looked at a certain way. So I moved to Colorado here, and I moved to Colorado here. And after settling into this place and really enjoying time with my family, I discovered culture shock. You know, there are 2 H-Marts here. I feel as though those H-Marts are just still places, and also Ocean Pacific Marts. I feel those places are still ways we can get our, you know, cultured foods. But it was hard to see us gather. I mean, look at this little meeting right now. A lot of us Asian Americans are scared to come out into the public and talk about these issues. If my mother wasn't dead, I don't think I would be here. But with her sacrifice and the fact that I have dealt with this situation before, I am here and I am loud and I am proud that I am Asian American, and that's why I'm here to celebrate this with you all. So here's some of the history that I've learned about, which was very interesting. Here in Colorado, the first race riot was actually done in Chinatown, just right down the street. It was a huge flourishing area, Chinatown was. And I had mentioned this about a month ago, you know, when the spa got shut up, I had mentioned, this brief history, but I'll go over it again. All right, so this little area, many Chinese people moved to this area because of the railroad systems. So, unfortunately, people started discriminating on this area, calling it Hop Alley, because of the opium dens. And the area extended from 15th Street to 20th Street, from Market Street to Wazee. And the first ever race were recorded there on October 31st, 1880. They actually killed one Chinese man. They ransacked and burned much of Chinatown over a pool fight. And over $30,000 of damage was done. To this day, no one has been paid back for such damages, and events have basically become forgotten. To remember the horrible act, there's actually a huge, there's a plaque over there. It's not that huge. But to remember the huge flourishing Chinatown there is a plaque on the southeast corner of 20th Street and Blake Street. Also, one thing I found out about Colorado's history is there's a lot of KKK situations that happened not even 100 years ago, actually, people. I thought that was pretty interesting. So there's actually records, you can actually look them up at www.historycolorado.org/KKK ledgers. And you can actually find, KKK member books dating from 1924 to 1926. Again, you can look at documents containing nearly 30,000 entries. Those names are on display, and more than 1,300 ledger pages. So again, if you want to take out your phone and get that website to see the, how many people are on that list, and to see what type of stuff, they had going on, they weren't ashamed. It's right there, people. Their names are right there. And these are people, who live in Colorado. So, this being said, Colorado, your history is why I choose to speak. And to announce that I'm proud of being Asian American. Yes, I dug a bit into you and found your thorns, but we must look at our past to understand why we stand here now. I stand up against white supremacy, who created hate and are still instigating this Asian model minority myth by not even acknowledging all the BIPOC people. America, we need to do better than announcing a bill against anti-Asian hate crimes on the Asian American community. What about everyone else? This is only part of it. We need to acknowledge and stop hate against all crimes, period. All hate crimes, period. So also, by the way, if you want to look up the names of the 36 Republicans who voted no against that bill, it's widely available, people. You can go to clerk.house.gov/votes 2021 145. Again, if you want to take your phone out and get that information, I'll also be posting on my page. It'll list the name, the 36 names. I'd go over it, but it's really derailing for me to even think that these people were going to be against a bill of hate. So, the history gets deeper. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We need to create change, everyone, by educating our community of our past to heal these traumas, these generational traumas. Okay? We need to also communicate with our senators, our legislators, our mayors, and anyone that will listen and support these causes. Email them, call them. Their numbers are all over online. You can even look them up through, maps. Call them, and some of their information is right there on their website. Join one of their city meetings. It's not that hard. Do what it takes to create change. I stand at many intersectionalities as a bisexual, biracial, multicultural woman who works in a technical audiovisual field. It's time to stop playing Denver and make some freaking moves. Let's stop the hate and spread love. Now, to end and conclude my speech here, I want to go ahead and read a poem that I wrote April 18th, 2018. It's called Love Revolution. Don't get lost in let me start that over. It's called Love Revolution. Don't get lost in lack of translation. More people unite, use that frustration for our rights to find harmony and love. This has been far enough. Let's as one. All this trouble is left to be done with the separation that divides. Stop that mindset that we are the bad guys. Finally begin to realize we need to come together and be the people who understands. We will all bleed from the daggers and guns we've made with our own hands. Find the similarities that unite, not the differences that start the fights. Become that light that guides the masses. You will not find that at any school or classes. Within you, the light will become more. It will be something like you've never felt before. It starts with a prayer of hope and understanding. It will grow and become demanding. You cannot stop the light of love and harmony. It's not something you can buy with any of our money. It shines brighter than any star in the sky. It burns through any negativity, scream, or cry. We must feed it with what it puts out. So stop the fear and doubt. Feed the fire that burns this light within, and let this revolution, this love revolution, begin. Thank you, everyone.
There are a lot of people selling ladies. I just actually see ladies cash only, or do they have I don't know. I gave cash if I had to. And then she spoke and danced over the city. That's exciting. Yeah.
Oh, is that where you got the mask from that Adam was wearing?
I don't know.
All right, Adam Fung is here. And we're going to have him come to the stage right now. Thank you, Adam Fung, for being here.
Oh, I do know.
Thank you, Laura. And that was a very inspiring speech. And I heard many inspiring speeches here today. I am proud of each and every one of you coming together and bring on this event. A little bit about myself. My name is Adam Fung. I'm a single father. I'm a union activist, and I'm a candidate for Aurora City Council at large. I am a son of Chinese immigrants. And for me, I've been through a long journey, and each and every one of you have. This journey continues. For me, I grew up in a small town that was very undiverse. As time went by, my fellow students saw that I had different features, different hair color. And that's when the dehumanizing process started to begin. I had to go through bullying. I had to go through hazing. Life was rough. I attempted suicide. I ran away from home. And my parents had a small business in that town. And I walked in the bathroom of my parents' small business, And on the wall, it said, "Kill the chinks." I thought to myself, why do we have to be treated this way? Aren't we all humans? But words matter. Words like gook, chinks, N-words, whatever the case may be, is a way to dehumanize people and make them less of a human. And every time I feel like I was making progress, I felt like I was being pushed back because I'm a person of color. But then I finally asked myself, what do I do? And who am I? I'll answer the who am I part. My name is Adam Fung. I am proud of my last name, Fung. I have constantly been made fun of because of my last name, because Fung can be used for anything. We have to be proud of our names. We have to be proud of our ancestry. We have to be proud of our heritage and not be ashamed of it. And I asked myself, what can I do? Should I bring on negativity and continue this cycle of negativity to others? I said no. I'm going to choose compassion, love, and bring joy to others, which led me to activism and volunteering, and now doing something crazy like running for office.
Yeah. Woo!
Each and every one of you is a leader. You can bring positive changes to our society and kill off the system of racism that we have, the system of dehumanizing others. I urge everyone to choose compassion and love and not harden your hearts. When you see your neighbor in trouble, extend a hand and say, I'm here to help. I'm here with you. Because if we continue to live in a society of hate, we won't progress. And hate is everywhere. We have seen the rise of white supremacy in our institutions. And we must get rid of that. We must make that change. We must be that positive change. And those of you who are graduating high school, you're beginning a new chapter. Life is going to be a struggle. But through the struggle comes positivity, comes hope. And I'm proud of each and every one of you, and be that positive change. Thank you.
Sorry about that, y'all. Just, COVID and us. Aloha mai kako, o ke alohilani ko uinoa. Hello everyone, my name is Ke Alohilani Minami. I originally grew up in, let me hold it a little bit further away. I hear a little bit of, step back. There you go. Okay. Everyone hear me okay now? Alright, perfect. So I was originally born and raised in California, specifically Tongvaland, which is Los Angeles area, and I identify as a queer, able-bodied, cisgender woman. I come from the Kanaka Maoli Native Hawaiian diaspora, the Vietnamese diaspora, Japanese diaspora, and also a little bit of Caucasian. And I find that it's important that I recognize these identities first and foremost because it shapes my experiences and what I'm about to tell you all today. I'm an artist and I'm a storyteller. I work with organizations in Southwest Denver to document food justice and food sovereignty. Storytelling, it's a part of me. It's a part of my identity as a Kanaka Maoli. It's how we've kept our traditions alive, kept our ancestors alive through our stories. And so I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself and my family. In California, I grew up in a middle-class, predominantly Asian community, and thinking that the umbrella term of Asian American, Pacific Islander, we would all be inclusive of each other and it would be a very universal experience, but this is not the case. And I felt that way, especially growing up in Cerritos, Artesia area, which is, again, in Los Angeles County. First and foremost, I was always Hawaiian before I was Vietnamese or I was Japanese, because my first name and the way I look gave it away. And the way I act gave it away because I fit into what people assumed a Hawaiian would be like. And because I did not speak Vietnamese, I don't speak Japanese, and I'm a couple generations removed from the people who originally came here. Leading with my identity as a Hawaiian has really shaped my experiences and learning what it's like to be treated like a Native Hawaiian in the diaspora. It feels like disconnection, and it feels that when you speak out about people commodifying your culture, exotifying your culture, and almost othering it and feeling exhausted in relation to it under this umbrella term. And once I speak out about it, I was always painted as the angry Native, as the angry woman who wants to gatekeep her own culture. But I think Natives are justified. I think they're justified to have that generational pain of erasure and displacement. It's okay for us to feel this way because at the end of the day, white supremacy has stolen so much of our culture from us and has placed it as something that you can buy, as an experience, as something you can go to Hawaii and go to all these resorts, go to the amazing beaches and feel like you are part of the culture when in reality it's this pre-packaged pamphlet of what they want you to see, and you don't get to see the real sides of Hawaii. You don't get to see the homelessness, the poverty, the displacement of Native Hawaiians on their own land. I used to resent the people within my community who made me feel othered and made me feel like there was no way that we could find a middle ground. But I've realized now, as I've gotten older, that it's not their fault. It's a fault on the public education system for not teaching us of the true, accurate history of all these different places across the world. All the places that have experienced pain from white supremacy and US imperialism. We never learned about Yuri Kochiyama, Larry Itlong, Haunani K. Trask, and all the other amazing activists that show what we have done in the past and how we can follow them in the future. This is because they didn't want it to fit into their narrative of who we are as docile people who won't stand up for what's right. They want us to conform to how they put us in this box. And so I'm here to give y'all a decolonized lesson, History 101 of Hawaii. So Hawaii is in Polynesia, and it was a monarchy and a neutral country that was internationally recognized by many different places, including Britain, which is why there was a Union Jack on the flag. I also want to recognize that even though there was slavery in the United States, in Hawaii, when Black folks came over, they were considered free, and they were able to live there free of any kind of shackles that the US had placed on them, because first and foremost, Black lives matter in the Hawaiian Kingdom. I'm gonna repeat that again. Black lives matter in the Hawaiian Kingdom. They always have and they always will. In case y'all didn't know, colonizers came over as a story with many different Native people who were colonized, and they brought with them diseases of many different kinds which decimated our Native population. By the mid-1800s, only half of the Kanaka Maoli were alive because half were killed by the diseases. And so with that, US businessmen and also the Marines came over and they started to accumulate land, accumulate power, and they wanted to take it all for themselves. So in 1893, they overthrew the kingdom. I repeat that again, they overthrew an independent nation. And so it's even recognized 100 years later under the Clinton administration that they did create a fault in the United States, and they recognize that Hawaii should be an independent nation. However, there has been no remediation from that. If we're going to recognize that they're an independent nation, then we have to do the follow-through steps. What are we going to do now knowing that it was illegally annexed, illegally overtaken? Well, I'll tell you what the Hawaiian people did back in 1897. They created a petition and they rallied around community power through the Ku'e petition, where 95% of natives signed it and turned it to the government, and they denied it. And they annexed Hawaii anyways, and then they turned it into a state. They banned our language, banned our dance, hula, and they sold Hawaiian artifacts from the palace. They're erasing the culture and displacing the people. This is not an isolated incident. You can see this across all of the Pacific. On the Marshall Islands with the Bikini Atoll that is currently leaking toxic waste into their lands to be unlivable. Micronesia, where they have bombed the islands for so long that there are still birth impacts today. Now they have become environmental refugees going towards Hawaii and experiencing racism because they're the new migration wave. In 1900, Samoa was taken as a colony pretty much, and Guam in 1950. They're exploited, they're taxed, and expected to follow the same rules as the US without representation. The US has modern day colonies. Sorry. Obviously there's a lot of pain here, recounting all the ways that the US has exploited the Pacific. And it continues to displace people and erase their culture. This may feel like it was a long while ago, but it was not. My grandpa, he lived in Hawaii, in Maui more specifically, and he did not know the language. He was never taught it because they said, you know, you're gonna need to know English. He did hear his tutu and all the other ladies in the town when they would get together and quilt, they would speak Olelo Hawaii. And you know, he said it would sound beautiful, but he never understood anything they were saying because they never encouraged them to learn. He left in 1958, right after joining the military post-high school graduation. He was living there while Hawaii still wasn't a state. I consider this still a colony. Now it's a military occupation. Even though it is technically a state, it is a military occupation. We need to call it as it is. In my own personal experience, I always felt like an imposter when I would go back to Maui. I would feel inferior to all the other natives because I didn't have the same access to land that they did. And I also didn't have access to the culture, and sometimes the words would sound foreign in my own mouth, even though I know what they mean. After spending a month on Mauna Kea, I felt like I was living another life in a sense, where I would go around and people would know that I'm Hawaiian. They wouldn't question that I belonged there. But once I opened my mouth, they could tell I was from California. And I immediately felt othered. I know that was feelings within myself, and people probably didn't feel that way about me. Imposter syndrome really hits people. But I realized that this is not an isolated experience either. 45% of Native Hawaiians do not live on the islands. This is almost half. The way that I feel and the experience that I've lived in the United States is common for so many, nearly half of our people. With the military occupation creating higher living expenses and creating poverty, what other options do people have other than joining the military, joining this military industrial complex that encourages US imperialism abroad? It's no wonder that I feel disconnected, because that was the point. That's the entire point of US imperialism. Displace and erase. Make them feel disconnected so they will be docile and continue to move in the way that you want them to, without knowing the history of resistance in their blood. My identity as both Native Hawaiian and Vietnamese, I've realized that all of this US imperialism and US intervention through wars and violence has caused my family to come to the US. I'm standing here today to reclaim my identity, know history, and denounce the settler state as an act of resistance. I do this for my ancestors, for my tutu, Elizabeth Vehilani Kuluakini, who was too young when she passed away, for my uncle, John Keola Lake, who always kept us connected through his legacy and by tracing our genealogy, for my papa's grandparents, Abigail and William Kuluakini, who kept their culture alive as best they could less than one generation after the coup. For my kupuna, John Duncan, who signed the Ku'e petition, and for my papa, who also feels the pain of displacement and the erasure of our culture. Our freedom is tied to everyone's. What Yuri, Larry, Haunani, all these activists in the past knew and did was stand with cross-cultural solidarity and called upon the knowledge of other people and other ethnic groups who are fighting for liberation. And there's nothing that scares this settler state more than collective activism. This country was built on indigenous land on the backs of enslaved African Americans with colonies around the world to import resources from. So hell yeah, they should be scared of us because together we can dismantle this state, and they know that too. Our goal here is to stand in solidarity with each other in order to end imperialism, whether it's in Palestine, Samoa, Puerto Rico, Marshall Islands, and all others who are impacted. We need to stand in solidarity with each other, with the Black community who continues to fight every day for equal rights and against police brutality. We need to show out for them, and Indigenous people to make sure they have their land back on the places that we're standing right now. Get involved with them, whether it's on this land, in Hawaii, in Alaska. We all need to stand in solidarity with each other. By working together, I know that we will be able to dismantle this U.S. imperialist state that has caused pain for so many generations and ensure that this will no longer continue for the generations to come. Mahalo nui.
Hi, can y'all hear me? Okay, great. My name is Natalie Wadwa. I'm 17 years old at Denver School of Science and Technology at Byers, and I'm the founder and president of my school's AAPI. When my grandmother and grandfather came to the States from India after being displaced in partition, they came with the intention to give back to the country that let them in. My grandmother was a successful IT woman and professor, and my late grandfather was in academia. They were so intent on teaching and giving based on the idea that America gave to us, so we must give back. That's a value I've grown up with, giving back to what nurtured you. But it's ironic, because every day America takes from my grandmother. It's in the stories she tells me about the residents at her retirement village mocking her yoga poses on her walks. It's in the looks in the grocery store as she taps the fruit or weighs it in her hands. But worst of all, it's in me. From the earliest time I can remember, I was taught to look at my Indian heritage and our practices with a disconnection akin to a child tapping on the glass of a fish tank. I created this internal connection between myself being of a different heritage, of the kids around me, and that same heritage being a source of amusement, not fulfillment or connection. And then I started taking from my grandmother, from myself. There's an unavoidable part of my brain, even after years and years of trying to understand the reality of being biracial, I still can't totally tune into the idea of my Indian half. I still talk about my family and my home country with that stinge of comical effect. I still carry an internalized desire to distance myself from who I am. And I don't think I'm alone in that, at least I hope I'm not. And I want to bring our attention to it today because this idea of giving what gives to you is so prevalent in my family and our culture, and likely a variation of this sentiment is in yours. I want to emphasize it was not America that nurtured my grandparents during their immigration to the States. It was their conviction, their determination, and their intelligence. It was not a country riddled with barriers to their success. It was themselves all along. So that statement, giving back to what gave to them, it's ironic because what they should have been doing all along is giving back to themselves. At the end of this day, as we end this Pacific Islander Asian Heritage Month and this amazing event, I charge you all with the radical act of giving back to yourself. One thing I've struggled with as a mixed teen is religion, grappling with my Hindu ties to my Christian affiliation. I was recently asked to give a speech to my church for the part of their senior celebration, and the statement they chose as the theme was, "Love thy neighbor as yourself." I'm not very opinionated on the ideals of different religions, as I don't think I'm old enough nor have enough experience to really know what I believe in. But I think I can say pretty objectively that loving my neighbor as myself feels like a start to ending the cycle of giving to systems that don't give back to us. Because love doesn't just exist from point A to point B. It's a mutual experience. To love yourself as your neighbor is not only a radical devotion to the self, it's a radical devotion to the world. To neglect oneself as a neighbor is to stop the cycle of love, whatever that may be. And to be a neighbor is a choice of ignorance or action towards other human beings, not a line on a county map. So if we go into the world with the charge of loving ourselves and as our neighbors, and loving our neighbors as ourselves, then we can give back to what is truly giving to us. If I could love the part of myself that I've looked down upon for nearly 18 years of my life, then I can end that internal cycle of taking from my grandmother and her history and her pain. If we can love ourselves the way we love those who give to us, we can work towards a genuine self-fulfillment, and there's nothing more powerful than a confident disruption in a stream of conformity. There is no more powerful resistance than the unabridged love of oneself and one's family and one's ancestry. The polarization of our cultures as Asians as a source of amusement is one of the power sources to our oppression. And when we embrace that culture, when we take on the world with the lens of our families and our cultures rather in spite of it, we'll begin to see that change. And I want to emphasize that there's no size to change. There's no big or small. Fighting the sources of oppression in itself is a revolutionary act. Do not diminish your actions by an internalized scale of what seems to turn more heads. So create change, but start with yourself. Look to grow, but look to foster. Look to love those who genuinely look to love you. The key to resistance can be found in our own appreciation of our families and selves, and I urge you to fight for that discovery. I urge you to fight for yourself. Thank you.
And that concludes our AAPI Heritage Month rally, community rally. I want to say some thank yous first before we take off. Huge thank you to all of you for coming today. The support means a lot to each one of us. A huge thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for sharing your story and your messages. I hope that resonates with the audience, and I know it resonated for myself. A huge thank you to Laura, who made this all happen. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you to Joey for giving me the first steps and leading me to the right people. Thank you to my parents for always being supportive and encouraging me to do and be the best person I could possibly be. Now, before we leave, I want to leave you with one final message. The road to equity and true inclusion is a long one. But the sooner that we unite as people, as humans, the sooner that we'll get to our destination. Thank you, everyone.
I'm not afraid anymore. 저기 저
We're all vexed. It's okay now.
Hey, great job, guys.
Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to come back live, folks, in a little bit when the Free Palestine event comes up, okay? They're coming back from their march soon, so we'll see what else is going on. There's the rally. And we're going to tell them to come on up. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to get to the dry spot over here. There we are. Keeping it real, keeping it from getting real wet anyway, right? So the AAPI rally is ending. The Stop Killing Our Kids police rally is returning. And a Free Palestine shall be asked for continuously here shortly. Are you ladies Colorado voters by chance? I have measures both for the city fall ballot and the state ballot. Are you a Denver resident? No. Okay. So what I have, the first one, we want to reduce property taxes. Okay. And the other one is that when groups, this is the property tax one, and then the other one is when an organization gets money from the state or federal government at the end of the year, a lot of times there's money left over. And we want that money that the groups can spend, in their predicted budgets, to go back to the general fund in a special account for the state to then determine what happens to it. So that, potentially millions of dollars isn't left out in accounts alienated because projects didn't get completed, people didn't do what they said they were going to do, but they got to keep the money.
Huh. And it's this one?
Yes, ma'am. I spent, 18 months in the South Pacific, Samoa, American Samoa, Fiji, and amazing, beautiful land, but realistically, like, it breaks my heart is the loss of the localized consumption practice.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Plastics and pollution just accumulating in a one-way trip.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Good day today. Thanks. Yeah, you can have some of this food. Clothes are not for free, unfortunately.
You know if they still come to the park?
Huh?
You know if they still come to the park on the weekends?
Oh, of course they do. Every day they're out there.
No, to get food and stuff?
Yeah, every day. Every day of the week.
You know what time?
In and out all the day. I'll be honest with you, usually there's a nooner, and then between noon and 6 or 7 o'clock, there's always stuff. Right? And then Monday nights at 4 o'clock, we're there too. Yes, by all means. Stop police brutality, folks. Stop killing black people. You know you want some of these shirts. I'm going to be doing printing of that stuff real soon. I got 2 new ballot measures. Reduce property taxes and... oh, you did? Yeah. Cool. And then the other one is when money's unspent in accounts at the end of the year, like the federal gives the state money for COVID tests, and they only use half the money for COVID tests. Really do the half the money, the other half of it. The state, we got to put in a special fund and then vote on it, basically. Okay. Yeah. Let's go, folks. We got lots of great funds here by donation. They help feed Denver's on the house in the community. Occupy Denver's on the 16th Street Mall every Sunday right now. We feed about 100 to 150 people a week with metal forks, plastic plates, home cooked meals, and meat every week. For those who want it, fresh fruits and vegetables. So the buttons have all kinds of political issues, people that have been killed, memorial buttons and stuff like that. It's all by donation. And if you're voters in the state of Colorado, we have things for fall ballot. Everything from Denver to get the recycling, use property taxes statewide. Thank you. Oh, and there's a rally here at 4. Yeah, okay. Very good. All right, folks, I'm going to save the batteries. comasquerade@gmail.com. And let's say hi to who's ever chatting in here in the lives. Lady, Zaga. Hey, tell everybody how much of a pain in the ass I am to work for.
No, you're great. You're an amazing guy. I don't think you're a pain in the ass at all. You really hooked me up amazingly. I think you're amazing. I have no negative
You just keep saying amazing.
I have no negative.
Oh, tell him the truth.
Did I say amazing?
Tell him the truth.
No,
Tell
I'm
the
grateful
truth.
to be a part of it. Yeah, it's worth it.
I'm joking. I'm fucking with you. Oh, yeah. Life's crazy sometimes. Frank, taking off? All right, we'll see you. Black National Freedom, Lady Zana, everybody who's in here hanging out. We're going to be here for a free Palestine. But I'm going to shut the battery down for a little bit and save it, huh? I think. Because that's what I need to do is save battery power and recharge up on it, okay? So we'll catch y'all soon. Talk to you. Where?